Welcome to Revenge with Nora. My name is Nora Calloway. I'm 32 years old. And the morning I drove back into my hometown, I told myself it was just a party. Just 4 hours. Just one night. If you think you already know how this ends, keep listening, because I didn't. The invitation had arrived 6 weeks earlier, tucked inside a cream envelope with my mother's handwriting on the front. Careful, looping letters, the kind she only used when something was supposed to feel important. Inside, a single card, 30 years. Our family, together. We hope you'll come. No mention of what happened the last time we were all in the same room. No acknowledgement of the 3 years I'd spent not answering their calls. Just the date, the address, and the word together, underlined once. I almost threw it away. It was my aunt who convinced me to go. She called on a Sunday afternoon while I was reviewing patient files at my kitchen table, her voice soft and careful the way it always got when she was about to ask something she knew I might refuse. "It would mean a great deal to me personally, Nora," she said. "Not to them, to me. I'll be there. You won't be alone." I stared at the ceiling for a long moment. Then I said yes. Not for my parents, for her. So there I was, standing in the parking lot of the Harrington Event Center in Cedar Falls, Iowa, wearing a dark green dress I'd bought specifically because it was nothing like anything my mother would have chosen for me. Smoothing down fabric that didn't need smoothing. Telling myself to breathe. 3 years of distance. 3 years of building something real. And now, 40 feet of carpeted hallway between me and the people who once made me feel like I was nothing more than background noise in their own story. I walked in. The ballroom was exactly as I'd imagined it. Warm ivory lighting, round tables draped in white linen, a photo display near the entrance with pictures of my parents through the decades. Their wedding. Their first house. My brother's Little League trophy. My brother's high school band performance. My brother accepting a regional music award I'd never even heard of. I scanned the display twice before I understood what I was looking for wasn't there. Not a single photograph of me. Not my college graduation. Not my acceptance letter to Johns Hopkins School of Medicine, the one my mother had cried over on the phone and then never mentioned again. Not the day I matched into my residency program. Not one image of anything I had ever done, standing on a wall meant to celebrate 30 years of family. I stood there longer than I should have. A woman in a catering uniform walked past me with a tray of champagne. I took a glass. Not because I wanted it, but because I needed something to hold. Nora. My aunt appeared at my side, smelling like lavender and the same face cream she'd used my entire life. She pulled me into a hug without ceremony, tight and real. "I'm glad you came." She pulled back and looked at me carefully. "You look like a doctor," she said and smiled. "I am a doctor," I said. She laughed and squeezed my hand. "They know you're coming. Your mother has been checking the door every 10 minutes. She hesitated. "She's nervous." "So am I said honestly. I found a place near the back of the room, close to the terrace doors, and watched from a distance. My parents were at the center table, the way they always placed themselves at the center of any room. My father was heavier than I remembered, his laugh louder. My mother wore a deep red dress and the pearl earrings she saved for occasions she considered significant. She looked polished and composed, and exactly like a woman who had never made a single mistake in her life. And then there was my brother. He was holding court at a table near the bar, 3 people laughing at something he'd just said, his guitar case leaning against the wall behind him like a prop. 29 years old, and still the sun everything else orbited. He caught my eye from across the room, and for a moment, neither of us moved. Then he raised his glass slightly, the way you'd acknowledge a stranger who held a door open for you. Courteous. Distant. Practiced. I nodded once and looked away. My mother found me 20 minutes later. I was standing near the terrace, watching the string lights sway gently outside through the glass, when I heard her heels on the floor behind me. I recognized the sound. I had spent years learning the sound of her approach, deciding in seconds whether it meant praise or correction. "Nora." Her voice was softer than I expected. "Older. You came." I turned. Up close, she looked tired in a way the lipstick couldn't hide. "You invited me," I said. She clasped her hands together in front of her. You look well. Thank you. A silence settled between us, thick and careful. She glanced toward the room behind me, as if checking who might be watching. Even now, even here, the performance never fully stopped. I was hoping we could have a real conversation tonight, she said. It's been a long time. 3 years, I said. Since graduation. Her eyes flickered. Nora. You flew to Nashville instead, I said, keeping my voice level. My brother had a showcase at a venue that held 200 people. My medical school graduation held 3,000. I paused. You chose 200. She exhaled slowly. The way she always did when she felt a conversation was being unfair to her. We thought you understood. The showcase had been planned for months. We couldn't just cancel. Neither could Johns Hopkins, I said quietly. Her mouth pressed into a thin line. We watched the live stream. Something cold moved through my chest. I told myself I was past this. I had sat with a therapist for 2 years telling myself I was past this. And yet standing 6 inches from my mother, hearing her say we watched the live stream as if that was a reasonable substitute for being present on the most significant day of my life up to that point. I understood that some wounds don't fully close. They just stop bleeding. I know, I said. I saw the text you sent. Congratulations, so proud. You sent it at 11:43 at night, 4 hours after the ceremony ended. I held her gaze. I still have it. She looked away first. I stepped outside to the terrace. The night air hit me clean and cold, a relief after the warmth of the ballroom. I leaned against the railing and looked out at the parking lot, at the ordinary landscape of a Thursday night in Cedar Falls, and breathed. The door opened behind me. Footsteps. Heavier than my mother's. My father. He was quieter than I remembered. Or maybe the years had simply taken some of the certainty out of him, the unshakable confidence he used to carry like a second skin. He stood beside me at the railing without speaking for a moment, both of us looking out at the same unremarkable view. Your mother told me you were out here, he said finally. I needed air. He nodded. He put his hands in his jacket pockets, a gesture I remembered from childhood, the one that meant he was trying to figure out what to say without saying the wrong thing. You're doing well? The hospital? 3 years into my residency, I said. Emergency medicine. Johns Hopkins Hospital. Baltimore. He stopped. That's something, Nora. It is, I agreed. Another silence. The music from inside filtered through the glass, soft and muffled, someone's idea of celebration. I thought about the night of my graduation, standing outside the auditorium in my white coat with my classmates, everyone's families crowded around them with cameras and flowers and noise, and me on my phone, pretending to check something important so no one would see that I was standing alone. We made a mistake, my father said. He said it simply, without preamble, and I think that was the thing that surprised me most. Not an excuse. Not a reframe. Just 4 words dropped quietly into the night air. I looked at him. His face was unreadable in the low light, or maybe I'd just forgotten how to read it. We made a mistake, he said again, as if saying it twice gave it more weight, and we didn't understand until much later how significant it was. What we were communicating to you by not being there. You were communicating that his potential mattered more than my achievement, I said. Not cruelly, just clearly. He might play at a big venue someday. I had already done the thing. I was already there, and you still chose maybe overdone. He was quiet for a long time. That's accurate, he said. I hadn't expected that either. The terrace door opened again, and my brother stepped out. He had his jacket off now. Sleeves rolled up, relaxed in the way he always was. As if every room adjusted its temperature for him when he arrived. He looked between us, and something crossed his face, not quite guilt, not quite annoyance, somewhere in between. Family meeting on the patio? He said, attempting lightness. I was just getting some air, I said. He leaned against the wall beside the door. You could have come in and talked to people, you know. Half of them remember you. From when I was 12, probably. People ask about you, he said. Mom talks about you. I looked at him steadily. Mom talks about me now, I said. She didn't used to. I have specific memories of dinner conversations where I mentioned my MCAT score, and within 4 minutes, the topic had shifted to your next performance. I wasn't keeping score. I just remember. His jaw tightened. It wasn't like that. I know it didn't feel like that to you, I said. That's the thing about being the one everyone faces. You don't notice the people in your peripheral vision slowly disappearing. My father made a sound, low and pained, and looked down at his shoes. My brother crossed his arms. So, what do you want, Nora? An apology? A do-over? Neither, I said. I reached into the small clutch I'd brought and withdrew an envelope. It was white, slightly worn at the corners from 3 years of sitting in the bottom of a keepsake box. I held it out to him. He looked at it but didn't take it. What is that? Open it. He took it slowly. With the caution of someone who suspected a trap, he pulled out what was inside, a photograph. 5 by 7, printed on glossy paper. It showed a woman in a white coat, standing alone on the steps of a large stone building, cap and gown over the coat, diploma in her hand, smiling at a camera propped on a timer. Behind her, Johns Hopkins stone facade rose gray and solid against a bright May sky. He stared at it. I set my phone on a bench and used the timer, I said. I took 11 photos because I kept blinking, or the angle was wrong, or I was trying too hard to look like someone whose family was there. That one is the best of them. I paused. I want you to have it, not to make you feel guilty. I'm past guilt as a goal. I want you to have it because I spent 3 years wondering if that day was as significant as I believed it was, or if I had somehow exaggerated its importance in my own mind. And I want you to look at it and understand that it was real, it mattered, and you weren't there. My brother's expression shifted. Something in it cracked open slightly at the edges. Something I didn't have a name for. He looked at the photograph for a long time without speaking. My father turned away and pressed the back of his hand briefly to his mouth. Haley, my brother started. Nora, I corrected. Nora. He looked up. I'm sorry. The music swelled inside. Through the glass, I could see couples on the dance floor, my parents' friends and relatives caught up in the warmth of an anniversary celebration, entirely unaware of what was happening 10 feet away on the other side of a glass door. I believe you, I said. That's not nothing. I said goodnight to my aunt before I left. She held my face in both her hands and said, You are exactly who I always knew you'd be. I drove 3 hours back to Baltimore that night instead of staying at the hotel I'd booked because I wanted the road and the dark and the radio and the uncomplicated forward motion of going somewhere that was mine. The next morning, I woke up to 7 missed calls. I made coffee first. I watered the small potted herbs on my kitchen, windowsill, basil, rosemary, mint, and then I sat down and pressed play on the voicemails, on speaker. My mother, first. I think tonight could have gone better, Nora. I hope you understand that this kind of thing affects the whole family, not just you. My father, you made your mother upset. I think we deserve a chance to have a proper conversation without everything turning into a confrontation. My brother, last, his voice quieter than the others. I kept the photo. I just wanted you to know that. I deleted the first 2. I listened to my brother's message a second time. Then set the phone down on the table and looked out the window at the Baltimore skyline going pale with early light. I didn't respond to anyone that morning. I had rounds at 7. 3 weeks later, my attending physician, Dr. Patricia Wen, forwarded me an email from the Johns Hopkins Alumni Communications Office. A journalist with a national health publication was writing a feature on women in emergency medicine who had trained at Hopkins. One of the faculty members had nominated me. The email asked if I'd be willing to speak with the reporter for 30 minutes. I wrote back within the hour, yes. I'd be honored. The interview was on a Tuesday. The reporter, a woman named Jacqueline, asked me about my path into medicine, the challenges of residency, the culture of emergency departments. Toward the end, she asked if there was anything outside of medicine that had shaped me as a physician. I thought about it honestly before I answered. Learning to rely on myself, I said. There were moments in my training where I didn't have the support structure I expected, family circumstances, and I had to figure out how to find validation internally rather than waiting for it from outside. I think that actually made me a better doctor. You can't wait for someone to tell you you're doing the right thing when someone is bleeding in front of you. You have to know. Jacqueline wrote something down. That's a powerful way to put it, she said. The article published 5 weeks later. The headline read, "The emergency room has no time for doubt. Meet the residents redefining what strength looks like." My name was in the second paragraph. There was a quote from Dr. When calling me one of the most composed physicians, under pressure she'd trained in 15 years. There was the line from my interview about internal validation. By the following Monday, the article had been shared widely enough that I started receiving messages from women I'd gone to college with, medical students I'd never met, strangers who had read it and felt seen by something I said. A first-year resident at Georgetown sent me a message that read, "My parents didn't come to my white coat ceremony. I thought I was the only one who pretended not to care. Thank you for making me feel less strange." I read that one 3 times. Then an email arrived from the Hopkins PR office. A reporter from a larger outlet had reached out asking about the piece. Apparently, the quote about internal validation had circulated widely on social media. They wanted to know if I'd be open to a follow-up. The same day, I received an email from an address I didn't recognize. I almost marked it as spam. The subject line read, "I saw the article. I opened it. Nora. I don't know if you'll read this. I want you to know we saw the article. The whole family did. The things that doctor said about you. We didn't fully understand until this, seeing it written about by someone who has nothing to gain from saying it, how much you have done. How much we missed. I am sorry. Mom." I read it twice. Then I opened a new email, typed 3 sentences, and hit send. "I know you're proud now, Mom. The question I sat with for a long time was whether you would have been proud if the article had never been written. I think we both know the answer, and I think knowing it is more useful to both of us than pretending otherwise." She didn't reply. I didn't expect her to. The follow-up article ran 6 weeks later. I had asked, specifically, that it focus on the work, the medicine, the patients, the research project I'd been contributing to on trauma response times in under-resourced communities. The journalist honored that. My name ran under the headline, "Building Medicine from the Inside Out." 3 words in the secondary text caught my eye when I read it. Quiet, certain, unshakable. My brother called that evening. I answered, which surprised me slightly. "I read it," he said. "Okay." I showed Mom and Dad. I figured. A pause. "The photo," he said. I framed it. "It's on the bookshelf in my apartment." He said it simply, without drama. "I look at it sometimes. I don't know if that means anything to you, but I wanted you to know." I sat with that for a moment. "It means something," I said. We talked for 22 minutes, which was longer than we had talked in probably 4 years. We didn't resolve everything. We didn't pretend to. He told me about a recording he was working on. I told him about a patient case that had stayed with me. We skirted around the edges of all the old terrain without walking directly into it, and when we hung up, I sat quietly for a while in my apartment, in the particular silence of something that is not fixed but is, perhaps, no longer entirely broken. My mother called twice in the following month. I let both calls go to voicemail. The first message was 12 seconds long and said only that she hoped I was well. The second was longer. Her voice was different and it thinner. The composure she always kept tightly in place slightly loosened at the edges. She said she had been thinking about the photograph. She said she would like to see me, if I was open to it, not to argue or to relitigate the past, just to see me. She said, "I think I spent a long time looking at your brother's potential and forgetting to look at what you were actually doing. That was wrong. I don't know how to fix it, but I'd like to try." I sat with the voicemail for 3 days before I called her back. Our conversation lasted 40 minutes. It was not easy and it was not clean, and there were 2 moments where I thought about hanging up. But I stayed on the line. Not because everything was resolved. Not because the years of being overlooked had simply evaporated in the warmth of one honest phone call. But because I had spent a long time believing that strength meant not needing anything from the people who had failed to give it, and I was starting to understand that that was its own kind of imprisonment. I was strong enough now to stay in the conversation. That was different from needing it. 4 months after the anniversary party, I stood in front of 40 first-year medical students in a seminar room at Hopkins, filling in for an attending who had a family emergency. The session was supposed to be about clinical decision-making under uncertainty. I taught it that way for the first 30 minutes. Then, in the last 15, I told them something that wasn't in any textbook. You will have moments in this career, I said, where the people you expected to witness your growth simply aren't watching. Parents, partners, friends. People who should have shown up and didn't. And you will have to decide whether their absence is the end of the story or the beginning of it. I paused. In my experience, it's the beginning. But only if you choose to make it that way. A student in the third row, young, tired-looking in the way all first years looked in November, raised her hand. How do you choose that? She asked. How do you actually make that shift? I thought about a photograph on a bench timer, about a parking lot in Cedar Falls, Iowa, under string lights, driving away from a party before it ended. About 7 voicemails played over a basil plant on a Tuesday morning. About a message from a stranger who said, I thought I was the only one. You stop waiting for the moment they recognize what they missed, I said, and you start building something large enough that you recognize it yourself. The room was quiet in the particular way that meant people were actually listening. Later, walking across the courtyard toward the hospital entrance, the November air cold and sharp and completely honest, I thought about what it had cost to become the person standing in that classroom. The graduations and the ceremonies and the celebrations attended alone, the sticky notes and the timers and the voicemails and the long drives through the dark. The slow work of learning to be your own witness when no one else was paying attention. My phone buzzed. A text from my brother. Mom told me about your phone call. I'm glad. I stopped walking for a moment, looked up at the gray Baltimore sky. Then I typed back, me too. I put my phone in my pocket and walked through the hospital doors into the controlled chaos of an emergency department that needed me present, entirely present, and I was. That's the thing about building something from the ground up, with no one watching. By the time the world finally looks, you have already long since learned that you are always worth watching. You just had to be the first one to believe it.